In 73 AD, a jagged, isolated rock plateau erupted 400 meters out of the dead, flat expanse of the Judean desert. By this time, the First Jewish-Roman War was effectively over. Jerusalem had fallen. The Second Temple lay in ruins. But a radical faction of roughly 960 Jewish rebels, known as the Sicarii, still occupied this final stronghold. Look closely at this plateau. The sheer cliffs made an infantry approach impossible. Inside, King Herod the Great had carved massive cisterns straight into the rock to capture rainwater, and the rebels were living off storerooms packed with enough food and weapons to last for years. Ancient sieges usually followed a familiar playbook. You starved the enemy out, dug tunnels to collapse the walls, or rushed gates with scaling ladders. Here, tunneling into 400 meters of solid stone was impossible. Scaling a vertical cliff under fire was suicide, and the defenders had more food and water than an encamped army in the desert. Geography made Masada immune to standard tactics, but the Roman Empire operated on absolute control. Leaving an active pocket of rebellion, even a remote one, would broadcast weakness to the rest of the provinces. To crack the fortress, the Roman 10th Legion realized that swords and shields were useless. They had to fight the mountain itself, committing to a massive, landscape-altering feat of military engineering. Governor Lucius Flavius Silva marched on Masada with the 10th Legion. He brought roughly 15,000 people to the base of the mountain, a mix of hardened legionaries, auxiliary troops, and thousands of Jewish prisoners forced into brutal labor. Look at this map. Their first tactical step was circumvallation. They isolated the environment by building a continuous stone wall 4,500 meters long around the mountain base. To enforce quarantine, Silva embedded 8 fortified guard camps into the wall itself, providing 360-degree surveillance. The scale of this operation is written directly into the earth. You can still see the distinct rectangular outlines of these Roman siege camps permanently scarred into the valley below. This wall blocked physical escape, while simultaneously functioning as a psychological weapon. Day and night, the defenders looking down from the plateau watched an inescapable cage tighten around them. Masada had exactly one geographical weakness. On the western face of the cliff, there was a natural protruding rock spur. Since they couldn't march up the vertical drops on the other 3 sides, the Roman engineers decided to use that rocky outcrop as a foundation. They would build their own mountain to reach the summit. Thousands of captive laborers were forced to pile tons of earth, loose stones, and heavy timber beams into a towering ramp. They worked continuously, baking in the extreme heat of the Judean desert, slowly extending the earthwork higher up the rock face. This cross-section highlights the 100-meter vertical rise and 200-meter length required to keep the ramp stable. Up this precise angle, the Romans hauled a massive, iron-armored siege tower carrying a heavy battering ram directly to the fortress walls. Reaching the top, the Romans executed a coordinated assault. Heavy artillery, bolt-throwing ballistae, and stone-hurling catapults rained covering fire onto the defenders. Under that heavy barrage, the iron-plated ram pounded against the outer stone casemate wall until it completely shattered. Altitude and natural rock defenses ultimately meant nothing. The completion of the ramp proved that sheer cliffs could be entirely erased by Rome's logistical machine and a limitless pool of forced labor. Realizing the stone wall was failing, the Sicarii built a frantic secondary defense behind the breach. They packed earth between heavy timber logs, creating a flexible barrier designed to absorb the heavy kinetic shocks of the battering ram. The Romans immediately identified the wood and earth construction and abandoned the ram. Instead, they deployed incendiary weapons, hurling torches and flaming projectiles to ignite the exposed timber. For a brief moment, the defenders caught a break. A harsh desert wind pushed flames backward, threatening to incinerate the Roman siege tower itself. But then, the wind violently shifted, driving the inferno straight back into the wooden wall and entirely consuming the rubble defenses. The next morning, Roman troops locked their shields and stormed over the charred summit, fully expecting a desperate, bloody melee in the streets of the fortress. Instead, they walked into total, eerie silence. The night before, rebel leader Eleazar ben Yair addressed his people. Rather than face capture, enslavement, or execution at Roman hands, The 960 men, women, and children inside the fortress made a mass suicide pact. They drew lots to decide who'd end the lives of the others before falling on their own swords. Today, Masada remains a powerful symbol of ultimate defiance for a besieged people. Yet looking at the massive earthwork still gripping the side of the cliff, the mountain also stands as chilling archaeological proof of a brutal reality. No natural obstacle could halt the mechanical march of the Roman Empire.